that way. Alrighty, we are currently in the last subsection of motion and the centers. That's this section, and the subsection is called the centers and initiation. Last time we continued our study of the flaming diamond, which is the rod of initiation used by Sanat Kumara, pictured here on the outside of the of Chartres Cathedral. And this flaming diamond, which is Sanat's rod of initiation, is recharged by the direct action of the logos of the solar system at every world period. We then learned that in addition to being the rod used on initiates above the second degree, it is the talisman of this cycle of evolution. So talismans are objects that are charged with certain magical properties and potencies in order to carry out specific purposes. The rod is also used at certain planetary functions, which he says no more about. We can only guess what they might be. Maybe the initiation of a new civilization, the recharging of the poles after a reversal of the poles, that type of thing. And even more obscurely, it's connected with the inner round. We then took a look at the Earth, Mars, and Mercury triangle, whose energies are closely connected to the base of the spine chakra of both human beings and the solar logos. Connected with this triangle is the quote-unquote inner round just mentioned, which DK tells us is a mysterious cycle of which little can be told. It is not concerned with manifestation through the 7 schemes or globes, but has to do with certain aspect of the subjective life or the soul. So, we all have a soul by which we are overshadowed, and this suggests that these inner rounds involve the subjective life of the soul, meaning, of course, the non-manifested life, the soul on its own plane, the solar angels. We can only guess at what goes on during these inner rounds. But he does give us this passage, which will bring us up to where we left off last time. Could we get a reader, please?
Yeah, and Veronica, you want to read? And Veronica. Oh, Maria Christina.
Did you talk to me, Michael? I didn't hear you.
Yes. Do you want to read?
Okay. This inner round is followed only by a prepared percentage of humanity and is closely associated with a group who pass with facility and develop with equal facility on the 3 planets that make a triangle with Earth, namely Mars, Mercury, and Earth. These 3 planets, in connection with this inner round, are considered only as existing in the etheric matter, and in relation to one of the heavenly man, hold a place analogous to the etheric triangle found in the human etheric body. I have here conveyed more than has as yet been exoterically communicated anent this inner round, and by the study of the human etheric triangle, its function and the type of force which circulates around it, much may be deduced about the planetary inner round. We must bear in mind in this connection that just as the human etheric triangle is but the preparatory stage to a vast circulation within the sphere of the entire etheric body, so the etheric planetary triangle, passing from Earth to Mars and Mercury, is but the preparatory circulatory system to a vaster round included within the sphere of influence of one planetary lord.
Thank you, Anne Veronica. Okay, well, we could look at this in detail, but we did that some point last time. If you're interested, check out our last session together. You'll have to go back a ways in order to get to that session, but it's session number 61. Yeah, it's very provocative. Obviously, Mars, Mercury, and Earth in their normal scheme demonstration is not are not etheric, right? And therefore, it may also be that these three planets, in terms of etheric matter, see, it says here are considered only as existing in etheric matter, may also have to do with the inner rounds of Mercury and Mars. But there's many, many more questions here than there are answers. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this? Okay, back to the text where DK continues his description of the rod of initiation. Could we get a reader, please?
Ben, do you feel like reading?
Okay. Third, the rod of initiation, wielded by the logos of the solar system, is called, among other things, the sevenfold flaming fire. It was confided to our logos by the Lord of Sirius and sent to our system from the radiant sun. One of its purposes is for use in emergencies. This great talisman has never yet been employed in this particular manner, though twice it was nearly thus used, once in Atlantean days, and once in the third year of the late war. This rod of power is used at the initiation of the 7 heavenly men on cosmic levels. It is used also in the initiation of groups, a thing almost incomprehensible to us. It is applied to the centers of the 7 heavenly men in the same general way as the lesser rods are applied to the human centers, and the effects are the same, only on a vaster scale. This, needless to say, is a vast and abstruse subject and concerns not the sons of men.
Thank you, Ben. So first, the statement. Third, the rod of initiation wielded by the logos of the solar system is called, among other things, the sevenfold flaming fire. It was confided to our logos by the Lord of Sirius and sent to our system from that radiant sun. Okay, so the sevenfold nature of the solar logoic rod enables it to work with the rays as personified by the planetary logoi and on the 7 cosmic physical planes. This is the only reference to the quote unquote sevenfold flaming fire in all the blue books. There are, however, a few references to the solar logoic rod, and among these, this is the most notable. So could we get a reader, please? So kind of jumps in the middle of the description, but this is all about this solar logoic rod. Reader, please.
Barbara. Barbara. Do you want to read, Barbara? Okay.
Barbara, are you there?
Oh, yes, here I am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Systemic, used by a solar logos in the initiations of planetary logos. With cosmic initiation, we have not to do. It concerns expansion of realization beyond even the ken of the highest initiate in our solar system. With systemic initiations, we are concerned only in trifling measure, for they are on so vast a scale that the average human mind cannot as yet envisage them. Man appreciates these initiations only insofar as they produce effects in the planetary scheme with which he may be concerned. Particularly is this so should the scheme in which he plays his microscopic part be the center in the logoic body receiving stimulation. When that is the case, the initiation of his own planetary logos takes place, and consequently he, as a cellular body, receives an added stimulation along with the other sons of men. At the planetary initiation, the rods of power wielded by the solar logos is charged with pure electrical force from Sirius and was received by our logos during the secondary period of creation from the house of that great entity who is the presiding Lord of the Lords of Karma.
Thank you, Barbara. Again, more questions than answers, but extraordinary information. Okay, next up, one of the purposes is for use in emergencies. This great talisman has never yet been employed in this particular manner, though twice it was nearly thus used, once in Atlantean days and once in the 3rd year of the Great War. So the solar logoic rod can be applied to interfere with the natural course of events, both on Earth and other planets, though it has never been used in this capacity on Earth. Instead of using it in Atlantis to help the Brothers of the Light face, it was decided to cut that root race short with a cataclysmic flood. As to the second emergency, the war here described it's really the one world war. The 3rd year of the First World War was 1917. It's interesting. That was the year that the U.S. chose to enter the war, possibly helping to stay the hand of solar logoic intervention. Maybe there was just enough shift in the equation that interference was deemed unnecessary. So we have to hope that in the case of an imminent nuclear confrontation, a decision would be made to employ the solar logoic rod, as well as, there seems to be a number of emergencies afoot in our current climate worldwide, and who knows, maybe it's going to be necessary for a solar logoic intervention. But, you could see why it's important that it not be used unless it has to be for the survival of a root race. And, as I said, they even chose to let Atlantis, to pull the plug on the Atlantean root race instead of using this logoic rod. And we can't say for certain that that decision wouldn't be made again for the fifth Aryan race. I saw a hand from Christina earlier, and I'll get to Nadell if after Christina. What was on your mind, Christina? Did I see your face?
These little machines, yes, I am. I'm just, fiddling with this thing. But you can hear me, I hope.
Yes.
Well, ever since the very first start readings that we've in the midst of at the moment, starting with the Earth and Mercury and Venus, that incredible triangle that are all the rulers of Gemini. It's interesting because are those are the rulers of Gemini, and it's the Earth and Venus, as we know, with their incredible or very, unique or special relationship. Mercury facilitating that, that wonderful messenger Antakarana in the sign of Gemini of love. And at this time of 2025, at this time of conclave, at this time of seemingly planetary initiation, it just might seem that, I don't know, I just really would love any comments about Mercury, Venus, and the Earth in relation to these incredible times, but also the rod of power. I mean, it's planetary initiation. Maybe we are. That rod can be used for emergencies, but it also is used at the time of the initiation, not just of heavenly men, but of perhaps of our logos. We certainly are going through stimulating times,
Yes, indeed. Well,
critical times.
first of all, a correction. The triangle discussed was Mercury, Earth, and Mars.
Oh,
Yeah, and which forms the whose whose Earth. Let's see, how do I say this? They are three consecutive planets in the Earth chain. In other words, not the actual planets, but three consecutive names of the Earth globes in this fourth Earth chain that form the base of the spine chakra of the solar logos. This may be a temporary formation, but so we have this unusually important process and station, you could say, where it takes three consecutive globes, Mars as well. It's really it's the Earth, Mercury, and Mars globes, which are the fourth, fifth, and sixth globes of this chain that together form the base of the spine chakra of the solar logos. As to your other triangle, and it's easy to see how that could be mixed up, where it's Earth, Mercury, and Venus as the rulers of Gemini. Well, these are the planets involved in making the Antakarana, the building of the Antakarana, possible. In other words, closing the gap between the fourth and fifth kingdom. And this is also very much afoot right now as we moved in. This influence is very present as we now move into the Aquarian age. Okay, and Nadell, sorry, I want to call you a famous tennis player for some reason. Nadell.
Victor Nadal. I was going to say something which I now realize couldn't be. That perhaps the third year was 1941, when it wasn't clear if the Nazis might win and hierarchy was going to withdraw. But the problem with that is that this book was written before then, so they couldn't be.
There is that problem, yes. Yeah. And he does talk about the war being the two world wars being actually one war. So the third year of that would be 1917. And of course, proof of that, this came out in 1925, this book. And so, yeah, it would be 1917. But good to clarify, you know. Okay, next up. This rod of power, and we're talking about the solar Lagoi rod, is used at the initiation of the 7 heavenly men on cosmic levels. It is used also in the initiation of groups, a thing almost incomprehensible to us. Okay, possibly these planetary initiations occur on the cosmic mental plane within the planetary causal bodies. Our Earth logos, we know from later in this book, is in process of preparing for his second cosmic initiation, and there's some writings that suggest that this will coincide with the time of our Earth becoming a sacred planet. DK teaches that we are on the cusp, this is addressing the idea of group initiation. So DK teaches that we are on the cusp of shifting from individual to group initiation. As of 1875, the shift was instituted in the hierarchy, that would be the goal during the time of the Forerunner to begin the process of group initiation. However, I can't believe that that's what he's talking about here. It would seem to me that the flaming diamond, the planetary rod of initiation, which is used from the 3rd to the 5th initiations, would be sufficient for the initiation of groups of human disciples. Now, I may be wrong about that, but if not, then possibly the groups here cited, because, he says a thing almost impossible to conceive. And I don't find it impossible to conceive of the idea of a group of disciples having a group initiation. But, it's hard to say for sure. But anyway, one possibility that is that the groups here cited refer to undisclosed groups connected with the planetary chakras, or, like certain ashrams, or possibly initiations of those ashrams, like Ray ashramic initiation. Some form of intermediate groups. I mean, even kingdoms can be initiated, which have a connection with the chakras of the Earth logos. And so possibly that's would be done through the solar Lagoic rod of power. Next, it is applied to the centers of the 7 heavenly men in the same general way as the lesser rods are applied to the human centers, and the effects are the same, only on a vaster scale. This, needless to say, is a vast and abstruse subject. It concerns not the sons of men. The centers of our planetary logos include Shambhala, the hierarchy, and humanity. We might then hypothesize that that would be head, heart, and throat centers, right? So we might then hypothesize that when humanity takes the first initiation as a kingdom, it will take place under the rod of the solar logos. Speculation, but very possible. A few pages back, we learned that the way in which the flaming diamond is moved determines how the fire at the base of the spine and the fire of mind are, quote, directed along certain routes or triangles of chakras, emphasizing the intricate nature of the process and the extraordinary control needed by the initiator. Apparently, a similar series of directed movements is used by the solar logos when initiating a planetary logo. Okay, next up, can we get a reader, please? Yes, Scott.
Go back. I want to go back to the World War thing. I'm pretty sure he was speaking of World War II when he spoke of that. I mean, there was some passage, I'm not sure which book it's in, where he goes into that.
Yeah, but this book was written in 1925.
Yes, but I don't think that's, I still don't think that, I'm not saying that this was done in this, well, I still think it's the Second World War, but it may be both.
Yeah, yeah. I know the passage you're talking about, and it's an important passage that the hierarchy was pretty much packing their bags in
Right,
1942, which you could see as the third year of the Second World War, starting from
right.
39, and interestingly, it does correspond. Um, but there is that pesky detail that this was written 20 years before. Um, I'm looking at a bunch of chats here. Let's see here. What do we have here? Yeah, Ben says the pandemic swept through military camps and civilian populations, weakening armies and complicating peace negotiations. Some historians suggest that the flu accelerated the war's conclusion as exhausted nations struggled to maintain their forces. Interesting information. And then before he wrote that, I'm reading them in the reverse order received here. The Spanish flu had a significant impact on World War I. Pandemic emerged in January of 1918, overlapping with the war for 9 months and continuing in its aftermath as soldiers returned home. Is it true, Ben, that there were more died from the flu than died in combat? That's
I don't know. I wasn't there.
and yeah, it was an enormous. I mean, first of all, World War One had something like 13 million people died if you included civilian populations. It was way more people died than in World War Two. See, then you
It's
also then and Veronica says, um,
Actually,
oh,
it was near 29 million Russians died in World
in
War
World
II.
War in World War
Two.
29 million,
29 million
really?
Russians died fighting the Nazis. Yeah,
Oh,
'cause they
and,
won the war. We came in after in Normandy. We
yeah,
lost almost nothing.
yeah. Well, there's definitely some statistics to compare. Um, okay, so right, so we are here.
If I may, and I recall seeing a film, India, more people died of starvation because the food, they were the food basket for all of the rations being sent to the soldiers and so on. More people died of starvation in India than the number of soldiers that were killed. There was a film about that
For World
long
War
ago.
One or World War Two.
I believe, I'm not sure. I just remember
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they provided the food and they starved. And
Wow.
there was more people that starved than were shot.
Huh.
Anyway,
Thank you, Maria Christina. Okay. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yeah, before that is Barbara. Did Barbara ask her question?
Go ahead, Barbara.
Yeah, so despite all of these dreadful things happening, the overall evolutionary plan goes on. So I'm wondering, even in the Atlantean times, the life wave went on, and certain adepts apparently um, initiated the upward swing of evolution. So I'm wondering if the life wave or the kind of consciousness of the planet goes through initiations despite what is happening to individuals on the planet.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Of course, we have to keep in mind in talking about all these deaths, et cetera, that no one ever dies, right? it's just a transition uh, to a different stage of beingness, and so all this has to do with outer demonstration, and the only reason that, for instance, the solar logos would consider interfering would be if there was uh, it wouldn't be because of the number of deaths. It would have to do with the triumph of the Black Lodge taking over the entire uh, civilized world, which was what was imminent at the time of the Atlantean battle between the dark and the light face, mainly because mind was not at that time developed, and therefore the psychic uh, uh, bodies of the population could be directly interfered with by the Black Lodge, and that was a kind of intrusion that had to be stopped. That was why it was decided to end that fourth root race, right? The conditions ending to the fifth root race would be very, very different. Um, but that's a whole other topic. And yes, to get back to your question, it's a very interesting one. The idea that the life wave, irrespective of the outer demonstration, could be initiated. Well, the only thing that, there are teachings that mitigate against that idea, which is DK tells us in no uncertain terms that certain conditions have to be met before the externalization of the hierarchy can take place, right? And he describes them an externalization of the hierarchy in quite uh, clear detail. Um, and, you can read those and ask yourselves if you think that we have indeed, uh, because the time of the forerunner is now ended, uh, just. And so we can assess whether we have indeed fulfilled those requirements for the externalization of the hierarchy. Of course, even if we haven't, um, it, the the uh, the worst thing that can happen is delay. That's what the Black Lodge works to create, is delay. Um, as the energies of the Aquarian Age, which include the pulling in of the sixth ray and the uh, you could say the waning of the sixth ray and the waxing of the seventh, um, compel humanity to make certain changes. Also, there will be those, and I think are already those, who are incarnating uh, because they are more in sync with the energies of the Aquarian Age, and that will make a tremendous difference in terms of the way humanity unfolds over the next 100 years, as we prefer for the actual entrance in 2117 of the Aquarian Age. During this last, where are we at, 95 plus years of the cusp between the ages. So yeah, there seems to be a necessity of physicality in um, initiation. You know, DK has said that certain disciples have had to wait until a future incarnation to take initiation. And you say, well, why can't they just take it on the inner side? And there's something about uh, um, planting that quality, that's not the word I wanted to use, of having the descent of potency affect all the three she's as well as the higher principles of a human being that is part of the process of initiation. Okay, can we get a reader, please, for this section?
Yeah, I think I saw Carol. You opened
Yep,
your mic a few times.
ready.
Yeah, cool.
It is but touched upon, as an enumeration of the rods of initiation would be incomplete without some reference to it, and it serves to show the wondrous synthesis of the whole, and the place of the system within an even greater scheme. In all things cosmic, perfect law and order are found, and the ramifications of the plane can be seen on all planes and all subplanes. This greatest rod is the care of the first great group of karmic lords. It might be described as the rod which carries the voltage of pure phohatic force from the cosmic levels. The two lesser rods carry differentiated phohatic force. This logoic rod of power is kept within the sun and is only recharged at the beginning of every 100 years of the Brahma.
Fantastic information. Thank you. So first, it is but touched upon, that is the subject of this solar logoic rod, as an enumeration of the rods of initiation would be incomplete without some reference to it. And it serves to show the wondrous synthesis of the whole and the place of the system within an even greater scheme. In all things cosmic, perfect law and order are found, and the ramifications of the plan can be seen on all planes and all subplanes. So this is a profound as above, so below statement. The sevenfold flaming fire will, we learn on page 384 of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, be applied to our planet, which will be undergoing a chain level fourth initiation. This is different than purely cosmic initiations, for which the scheme is preparing for the second. Here he says, the planetary logos is midway through his career upon the cosmic path of initiation, and consequently is to take the fourth initiation in this chain. Well, may this globe therefore be considered the globe of sorrow and of pain, for through it our planetary logos is undergoing that which the mystic calls the crucifixion. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else in this that I wanted to touch on. Yeah, what does he mean by the wondrous synthesis of the whole? Every lesser initiation contributes to the synthesis that eventually result in a planetary initiation, which would happen under this systemic rod, right? And the place of the system within an even greater scheme. Here, of course, not meaning a planetary scheme, but the abstract use of the word scheme. So the place of our solar system within an even greater plan, you could say, which would involve the the initiation of the solar logos in relation to other solar logoi, and the lesser initiations of the planets within our solar system would represent part of our solar logoic advancement. Because after all, the planets are chakras in the solar system. So if a planet receives a cosmic initiation, then that is also going to be some form, a lesser form of initiation for the solar logos itself, because that chakra in that great being's system would be initiated or stimulated. So for instance, the transfer of energy from the solar plexus to the heart would be, for the solar logos, a intersystemic initiation. For instance, possibly the initiation of Venus, in a previous cycle, represented, because Venus is the heart chakra at this time, at least, of the solar logos, and so possibly that, the initiation of that planet to become a sacred planet also represented a move from the solar plexus to the heart of the solar logos. It's just hypotheses. We don't know that for sure, but that's, I think, is hinted at with when he says that the wondrous synthesis of the whole. Right. Okay. Let's see here. So yes, next. This greatest rod is in the care of the first great group of karmic lords. It might be described as the rod which carries a voltage of pure phohatic force from cosmic levels. So this first great group of karmic lords is, on the solar systemic level, the analogy to the Buddhas of activity on our planetary level. All right, because our Buddhas of activity are involved in the karma on our planet, and so we can assume that the karmic lords involved at a solar systemic level would occupy a similar position around the solar logos, just as our Kumaras, the 7 Kumaras, of which Sanat Kumara is one, form the heart, or the center, the shambhalic center of our planetary scheme. They accompany the rod during its journey from Sirius. Talk about these great karmic lords. Possibly the term pure phohatic force refers to that intelligent electrical living force that demonstrates on the first subplane of the cosmic physical plane, and then is stepped down to each of the first subplanes of the planes within the cosmic physical plane, thus charging the atoms of the particular atomic subplane undergoing stimulation during initiation, right? So because we're talking here about the solar logoic rod of initiation, then it would be working with the higher etheric subplanes of the cosmic physical plane, which would have their relationship to centers in the body of the planetary logos, and one of those would be particularly stimulated during a cosmic initiation of a planetary logos, just as we are on the mental, astral, and physical planes during the first, second, and third initiations. And finally, the 2 lesser rods carry differentiated phohatic force. This logoic rod of power is kept within the sun and is only recharged at the beginning of every 100 years of Brahma. So the Logoic rod channels pure Phohatic force. We can assume that the differentiated Phohatic force of the flaming diamond and of the rod used by the Christ steps down the energy so that it is safe to use on, mere human initiates. And this would be, carry the quality of differentiated Phohatic force would be representative of the lower subplanes of both the cosmic physical plane and the lowest three planes of that cosmic physical plane. And then he mentions it's recharged every 100 years of Brahma. Don't hold your breath. That's 311 trillion, 40 billion years. Did I see a hand? If somebody raised their hand?
Yes, I sigh. How did you describe the differences between Phohatic force and prana?
Yeah,
Pranic?
sure. Well, first of all, they're definitely interrelated. Phohatic force is intelligent electricity. It's very much connected, for instance, with Kundalini fires, the fire of matter. Prana is a fire in Kundalini, and that's where the interconnection between Phohatic force comes about. It is, you could say, an aspect of Phohatic force. And then you also have mental fire, which is a higher version of Phohatic force. And then above mental fire, all the fires of the cosmic etheric subplanes would be Phohatic. Prana is oriented towards nurturing and maintaining and it is a fire, and therefore has to do with prana, but it has the specific purpose of of nurturing and maintaining the etheric and physical forms. And it comes from, you have solar prana through a group of solar pranic angels, and they have a golden energy. And then you have planetary prana, which comes through the violet uh, uh, series of devas of the four subplanes uh, of the physical plane, literally the lowest physical plane, um, which have to do with the emanation of our planet. And everything that lives has its own form of prana, but those are the two forms of prana that we draw on in terms of maintaining our own vitality. You could say that prana is an aspect of Phohat, but Phohat is a much has a larger scope. As it represents all fiery electrical force of the solar system and beyond.
Oh, good, thank you. And prana travels through the etheric. Does Phohat?
Phohat charges the etheric as well as every other plane,
Okay,
depending
thank you.
on the type of electricity that's needed. So, for instance, mental fire, and we're using that right now, hopefully, with our lower mind conversation, that is ultimately a demonstration of Phohatic force. You could say the synapses in the brain are the lower demonstration of this numinal Phohatic force.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody else? Okay. So, just remember there are three rods. Three rods that are mentioned here. Of course, there's also going to be greater rods held by, for instance, that Logos, who is the amalgamation of the seven logoi solar logoi, of which our solar logoi is a part, right? He's going to have his own rod of initiation. Certainly the one about whom not may be said will also have its own rod of power related. But in having to do with our system, you have the solar logoic rod, the planetary rod, and the rod wielded by the Christ. Okay, next up, can we go? We come to the last paragraph of Division E of Section 1, this whole division. So it's called Motion on the Physical and Astral Planes. Can we get a reader, please? See.
Or I'll read again.
Okay.
The reason why the rods of power are here discussed is that they have definitely to do with the centers which the force vortices in matter, and which, through channels of spiritual force or centers, wherein the will to be finds expression, demonstrate as activity in matter. They are centers of existence, and just as one cannot in manifestation dissociate the two poles of spirit and matter, so one cannot in initiation apply the rod without bringing about definite effects between the two. The rods are charged with fohat, which is a fire of matter, plus electric fire, hence their effect. The mystery cannot be explained in greater detail, as the secrets of initiation are not transmissible. More has been here imparted on this matter than hitherto, though there are those who have heard these things.
Okay, I'm taking a quick look at the chat before we get into this. Yeah, how long is 1 year of Brahma? Just do a little quick math here. It is 3.11 trillion years. So 3 trillion 110 billion. I think that's what it is. You just divide 311 trillion by 100. Okay, and that was an answer to a question in the chat. Okay, first, the reason why the rods of power are here discussed is that they have definitely to do with the centers, which are force vortices in matter, and which, though channels for spiritual force or centers wherein the will to be finds expression, demonstrate as activity in matter. So he's just giving us the reason why these rods are discussed in this context. So the rods of power are discussed in the first section of ToCF entitled The Internal Fires, Fire by Friction, the Fire of Matter. That's the name of this whole 230-page section of the book, because their activity impacts the chakras, which are substantive in nature, having to do with the form aspect. The will to be, which arises on monadic levels, finds expression through these chakras. Okay. Next, they are the centers of existence. And just as one cannot in manifestation dissociate the two poles of spirit and matter, so one cannot in initiation apply the rod without bringing definite effects between the two. So all entified beings, even the one about whom not may be said, have their being in both spirit and matter. It's the very nature of existence, is you have this polarity. Rods of power at all levels increase both the heat and the rotation of the chakras being initiated, until they come together in triangular activity and finally synthesize through the fire of spirit. That's the effect of the rod, is to increase the rotation and the fiery activity in such a way that the chakras demonstrate, triangles of chakras demonstrate as a single energy field. Next, the rods are charged with fohad, which is fire of matter plus electric fire, hence their effect. This answers a question brought up by a passage a couple of pages back where DK tells us, quote, the force of the rod is twofold and its power terrific. Now we learn that this twofold force is, quote, fohad, which is the fire of matter, plus electric fire, the latter being the force of spirit. Hence their effect, quote unquote, suggests that only through the combination of these two electrical forces can spirit transform matter. Said another way, if it was just, we might imagine that these rods are just spirit, just carry the potency of spirit, but it wouldn't have the ability to affect or engage with matter, this teaching seems to suggest, if it didn't also carry this potency of the fire of matter. Okay, next. The mystery cannot be explained in greater detail, as the secrets of initiation are not transmissible. More has been here imparted on this matter than hitherto, though there are those who have heard these things. I'm sure there are. So one aspect of the secrets might have to do with how electric fire is able to use fohad to empower the synthesizing effect of the rod. You could have, that's actually doesn't make, now that I'm reading this, fohad is electric fire. So how does fohad as electric fire engage, create a synthesizing effect? Another subtle point comes through the phrase, the secrets of initiation are not transmissible. The way this is written suggests that it's not because they are secret that they are not transmissible. That would be our first take on this, right? Well, it's secret, therefore we can't, we don't get to know until when we are more evolved. But rather because there's no way due to the limitations of language that further information can be imparted. They're not transmissible, not only through language, but also through the vibrational quality that language transmits, that there is just simply no basis for understanding the secrets of initiation. And with that, we finish the 72 pages of Division E. Next up, the last division of the first section of TCF, entitled Division F, the Law of Economy. So can we get a reader, please?
Yeah, Joe, you want to read?
Yes. Okay. Section 1, Division F, the Law of Economy. Its effect in matter. 1, dissociation of atoms. 2, distribution of atoms. 3, vibratory rhythm. 4, heterogeneity. Yeah, heterogeneity. 5, inherent rotary activity. Roman numeral 2, its subsidiary laws. 1, the law of vibration. 2, the law of adaptation. 3, the law of repulsion. 4, the law of friction. And then there's a little thing there, its effect in matter. This law is the law governing the matter aspect of manifestation and is the law characterizing the work of the third logos and of the entities who are the embodiment of his will and the agents of his purposes.
Okay, thanks, Joe. So this list of aspects of the law of economy, all these are aspects of the law of economy, as well as the list of its subsidiary laws, subsidiary to the law of economy, suggests that we're in for a detailed analysis of the law of economy, which the third logos, the Brahma aspect, wields. Each of the three great cosmic entities have many subsidiary entities to carry out its purposes. Since these laws will be further described as we read, let's go ahead and continue. Can we get a reader, please?
Yuta, you want to read? Kirsten, do you want to read?
Yes. Each of the great cosmic entities who take form as the three logoi is distinguished by different methods of activity, which might be described thus. The third aspect of Brahma aspect and the activities of those entities who are his expression is characterized by that method in the distribution of matter, which we call the law of economy. It is a law governing the scattering of the atoms of matter and their dissociation from one another, wide distribution.
You there?
Action.
Oh, you dropped out for a little bit. Can you go back a full sentence?
Yeah. My internet is a little unstable. Do you hear me now? Do you hear me now? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, got heterogeneity and quality and their inherent rotary action. This law of economy causes matter always to follow the line of least resistance and is the basis of the separative action of atomic matter. It governs matter, the opposite polar spirit. The second aspect, the building or Vishnu aspect, is governed by the law of attraction. The activities of the entities who embody this aspect are directed to the attracting of matter to spirit and the gradual approximation of the two poles.
Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, so first, each of the great cosmic entities who take form as the three logoi are distinguished by different methods of activity, which might be described thus. So the cosmic entities here considered are the three major subsidiary aspects of the solar logos, whose expression is carried forward by the three rays of aspect, and whose planetary equivalent is found in the three Kumaras, synthesized by Sanat Kumara, just as the solar logos synthesizes the three logoi of will, love, and intelligence. Next, the third aspect of Brahma, the third or Brahma aspect and the activities of those entities who are his expression is characterized by that method in the distribution of matter, which we call the law of economy. It is the law governing the scattering of the atoms of matter and their dissociation from one another, wide distribution, vibratory rhythm, heterogeneity, and quality, and their inherent rotary action. So all the entities under Brahma, the third great logos, are subject to the law of economy, called here a method in the distribution of matter. We see that this passage lists the qualities enumerated in the table of contents in the left panel. Here's a further tabulation of that which the law of economy governs. The scattering of the atoms of matter, the dissociation of the atoms of matter from each other, the wide distribution of the atoms of matter, the vibratory rhythm of the atoms of matter, the heterogeneity of the atoms of matter, the quality of the atoms of matter, and the inherent rotary action of the atoms of matter. So the scattering, dissociation, and wide distribution of the atoms of matter happens during the involutionary phase, initiated and overshadowed by the third logos, also called Brahma, under the law of economy. Next, this law of economy causes matter always to follow the lines of least resistance and is the basis of the separative action of atomic matter. It governs matter, the opposite pole of spirit. So relationship between forms under the law of attraction requires increased effort because relationship is energetically demanding. It requires energy to form and maintain relationship, and that's governed by the law of attraction. Matter, on the other hand, follows lines of action which cause the least friction. This line of least resistance compels the forms to remain as they are, to resist all change, which comes through the demands of relationship, and thus to preserve its established pattern of activity. This, when these two come in conflict, that's where the fourth ray begins to demonstrate. And finally, he's just giving a thumbnail of these higher laws, law of attraction and law of synthesis. The main focus will here be on the law of economy. So finally, the second aspect, the builder or Vishnu aspect, is governed by the law of attraction. The activities of the entities who embody this aspect are directed to the attracting of matter to spirit and the gradual approximation of the two poles. The law of attraction, with the aid of Fohat, bridges the matter and spirit aspect. This law is dual in expression. In the three worlds of human endeavor, it is responsible for the interplay between the pairs of opposites, but on soul levels, it becomes the law of magnetic impulse, which DK tells us is to the soul realm what the law of attraction is to the world of phenomena. This higher subjective form of the law governs the relation, interplay, and interpenetration between the seven groups of souls on the higher levels of the mental plane. It also governs the relationships between souls who, even while incarnated, stay en rapport with each other. So that would be initiates in incarnation. Also, logic suggests that application of the rod initiation must also use this second aspect of the law of attraction, which brings into relationship that which the law of economy works to keep separated. Maria Christina.
You mentioned Fohat in relation to the law of attraction. Would it also be operational or present or the underlying presence of in the law of economy?
It would, let's see here. It would be the seventh brother, the lowest form of Fohat, working on the physical plane, which holds the atoms of substance together, right?
Thank you.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
at each higher level, you have different aspects of Fohat. So when you get to the sixth and fifth, which would be the astral mental level, then Fohat begins to bridge matter and spirit. That's where form building comes in.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, next up, continuing with the effects of the law of attraction. Could we get a reader, please?
Yeah, I think I saw Kira. You open your mic. You there?
Yes, I'm here. It results in cohesion in the production of conjuries of atoms in various formations. And this attraction is brought about by the attractive power of spirit itself. It shows itself in 1, association, 2, form building, 3, adaptation of form to vibration, 4, relative homogeneity of group unity, 5, cyclic spiraling movement. The line of least resistance is not the law of this aspect. The attractive power of spirit in form building and in the adaptation of the form to the need is the secret of the pain and resistance in the world. Pain is only caused by resistance and is a necessary phase in the process of evolution. This law of attraction is the law governing the spirit, the opposite pole of matter.
Thank you, Kira. Okay, first, it results in cohesion in the production of congeries of atoms in various formations. And this attraction is brought about by the attractive power of spirit itself. So the quote unquote attractive power of spirit itself is the cause of the attraction that demonstrates through the law of attraction. It is this attractive aspect that works to negate the separative rotary motion produced by the law of economy, thus bringing about a progressive cohesion of forms. Okay, so it's the this cohesing a factor between forms, which are themselves units of matter, what he calls here congeries or assemblages, you could say, of lesser lives. That which brings them into participation in a higher form is this law of attraction. So you could say that our very physical constitution, physical etheric constitution, is made possible by the law of attraction. That law falls away at death, and all the little lies that make up our threefold form aspect uh, 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 fall away into their own expression and become their own lives, right? In other words, the law of attraction loses its hold and the law of economy then rules the lesser lives. Yeah, next. It shows itself in association. Association suggests alignment through frequent and repeated contact. And we're talking about this law of attraction here. Non-association or dissociation is a function of the law of economy. Form building depends on alignment of the atoms of lesser forms in such a way that they can become effective constituent parts of the greater whole. The law of attraction stimulates that alignment and creates the bonding quality. Adaptation of form to vibration suggests that the quality of adaptation of the lesser forms to their own internal vibratory economy is expanded to include adaptation to the vibration that governs the greater form. You see, yeah. So the shift in which is the adaptation to identification with the greater form of which the lesser form will be a part requires this quality of adaptations made possible by the law of attraction. Relative homogeneity or group unity. This comes as a result of the previous three stages. When the lesser units become expressive of the vibration that governs the whole, they gain a relative homogeneity. Second aspect, homogeneity, is relative because it is expressive of cohesion and coherence. Only synthesis with spirit can create pure homogeneity. This is, you could call it relational homogeneity or relative homogeneity. Next, cyclic spiraling movement. Spiralic movement progresses towards spirit while still expressing the assimilating capacities of form. As evolution progresses, the power of the inner axis or direct motion of the spiral becomes increasingly dominant, in which case this spiral opens up and becomes that many more spirals, how do I say this? That there is a greater response to the core of the spiral, which is direct motion, and therefore there are fewer spirals in a given cycle. So next up, the line of least resistance is not the law of this for this aspect. Line of least resistance is an expression of the law of economy, which governs matter. This marks the difference between the rotary motion of the previous solar system under the law of economy and the spiralic motion that governs the present solar system operating under the law of attraction. FYI, direct motion will govern the next solar system under the law of synthesis. Next, the attractive power of spirit in form building and in the adaptation of the form to the need is the secret of the pain and resistance in the world. So he takes us out of this, the pure physics of this, into how it actually demonstrates in the world. In this solar system, the purpose of deity informs the great archetypes, which draw all forms towards synthesis, regardless of any prevailing magnetisms within the world of matter. For spirit has its own design and insists, you could say, that all forms be moved in accordance with the plan. Spiralic motion draws ever upward under the demand of spirit, continually breaks established bonds and demands the forging of new bonds, which forces the form aspect off the path of least resistance, thus causing temporary pain and distress. From the form perspective, adaptation is not a seamless process. Thus, as lower principles are superseded by higher ones, the form aspect, which up to this point has been governed by the lower principles, frequently experiences the pain associated with growth. And finally, pain is only caused by resistance and is a necessary phase in the process of evolution. This law of attraction is the law governing the spirit, the opposite pole of matter. You could add to that, it governs spirit in relation to matter. So on our planet of suffering, pain is inevitable. This is also true, we are told, on Mars and Saturn. Resistance, the cause of pain, comes about as a result of being held in thrall by outworn patterns, thus creating a rending process resulting in misery for those held within the bonded patterns. Little as we might like to acknowledge it, growth through pain and the emergence of enlightenment are inescapably related. This will naturally change as each of our conditioned magnetic patterns begins to resemble the fixed design of the second major solar system rather than that of the first, which we are still responding to. Let's take a look at what MDR has to say on the idea that the law of attraction is the law governing spirit, the opposite pole of matter. Could we get a reader, please?
Magda, do you want to read?
This is an interesting idea and must be compared with the thought that the law of synthesis is primarily the law governing the spirit. However, the law of attraction is simply a special case of the law of synthesis. That the law of attraction governs spirit at this time is due to the fact that the present solar system is the second of the three major solar systems and is governed by the law of attraction. From another perspective, the Tibetan seems to be linking spirit, which usually represents the fire aspect of divinity, with the first aspect of divinity, with the second aspect. This linking may be related to the thought that in our solar system, planetary electric fire is but an aspect of solar systemic solar fire. In man, that which we call spirit is the monad found on the second of the cosmic physical subplanes and is thus linked to the second aspect. This is true in a sense of our solar logos. There is no true expressions of the first divine aspect and the first ray in our present second ray solar system.
Thank you. Okay, any thoughts or questions about this? Oh, we don't have time. We're still good. We have a few minutes left. Okay. Next up, can we get a reader, please?
Maria Cristina Kina.
Aspect, or the will to exist, is governed by the law of synthesis, and the activities of the cosmic entities who are its embodiments are governed by the law of enforced unity and of essential homogeneity. It is the law that eventually comes into play after spirit and matter are blending and adapting themselves each to each. It governs the eventual synthesis of self with self, and finally with the all self, and also of essence with essence, in contradistinction to the synthesis of matter and spirit. It demonstrates as 1, abstraction, 2, spiritual liberation, 3, destruction of form through the withdrawal of spirit, the destroyer aspect. 4, absolute homogeneity and absolute essential unity. 5, progressive forward motion.
Thank you, Maria Christina. So first, the first aspect, or the will to exist, is governed by the law of synthesis, and the activities of the cosmic entities who are its embodiments are governed by the law of enforced unity and of essential homogeneity. So the Tibetan here calls the first aspect of divinity the will to exist instead of the usual will to be. He also reveals two additional aspects of this law, the law of enforced unity and of essential homogeneity. The latter suggesting that the relative unity of the second aspect ultimately evolves into the enforced unity of the first aspect. The word enforced suggesting that anything that might be perceived as other is excluded. Essential homogeneity is the source of attraction in the law of attraction, which inexorably draws all atoms of consciousness upwards along an increasingly attenuated spiralic path. So you have relative homogeneity, which is the law of attraction, and let's see, what was the other one here? And yeah, relative homogeneity and essential homogeneity, which suggests true synthesis, a truly homogeneous condition, which he calls essential homogeneity, right? Anything that is other, no form aspect is allowed to participate in this process. However, it is the force of this law that moves one towards essential homogeneity. But there is always a form. You know, it's under this law that this form is constantly becomes more spirit, expressive of spirit.
I just comment
Sure.
that
Raise your hand generally, but that's okay. Go ahead.
yeah, I'm playing around with this dumb computer. Computers are dumb. Anyway, enforced unity. I don't think it's possible to be outside. I don't think it's possible for anything to exist outside of unity,
You're
because
absolutely,
unity is enforced. That's it. No
you're,
options, nothing.
you're absolutely right. However, our perception suggests otherwise. Do you feel absolutely one with with no distinction whatsoever with every other human being alive on the planet at this point in time?
Not monadic yet.
Well, then you are demonstrating monadic consciousness, and I really should let you lead this class from now on. And I appreciate you.
Sorry.
Oh, no, don't apologize. I'm just having fun here. No,
Okay.
no. I'm saying that realized awareness of one's, what does he call it here? Um, Essential homogeneity. It's a question of consciousness. So when we come into a true realization of our essential homogeneity,
Right. Gotcha.
you see what I mean? That
Yeah, gotcha.
so,
Gotcha. Yeah, gotcha.
sometimes I play what I shouldn't. I hope it was okay.
No, that was fine. As long as we're playing, I can handle it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So, right. And so what you said, all you were really saying is that essentially we are all monads. There is nothing else, you know, and it's only in our relative consciousness that we experience, for instance, the laws of attraction and the laws of economy. But ultimately, we are one with all. It's what does Michael loved to say, not is but me, which are the great words of synthesis for the second ray, right? And of course, you can't say that from a separated individual perspective. You can only say that from a place of quote unquote essential homogeneity or enforced unity. Okay, next. It is the law that eventually comes into play after spirit and matter are blending and adapting themselves to each other. So it's progressive. In other words, it can't influence matter until it has come under the law of attraction, and thus, well, the word eventually suggests that this law becomes influential only when the monad begins to exert its influence. Spirit and matter blending is a mark of the soul and fused personality. You could say that level would be a full triumph of the law of attraction, which is then called the law of fusion, right? Both of these are conditions that come about at the third initiation, at which time the monad is, for the first time, directly perceived. Okay. Next, it governs the eventual synthesis of self with self, and finally with the all self, and also of essence with essence, in contradistinction to the synthesis of matter and spirit. So synthesis of matter and spirit, facilitated by the law of attraction, is a function of the form building second aspect, which results in a relative homogeneity. It's relational and is ongoing, especially in this solar system where this law dominates. Whereas synthesis of the self with the self, beginning with a personality infused soul, fusing with the monad, is a function of the law of synthesis. This law does not come into play for the personality in process of soul infusion. It only comes in once that soul of fusion has come into being and the monad begins to apply the law of synthesis in order to create this final synthesis of matter and spirit. This represents, it seems to me, a nearly infinite stage of becoming that includes upward merging with ever greater and more inclusive iterations of self, driven by the third stage of becoming, which is synthesis of the self with the all self. So it's driven by that, but completion of this final stage doesn't actually occur until the super cosmic, quote unquote, day be with us, or universal pralaya. So as long as there's a manifested universe, it's a combination of the second and third laws that are driving us ever upward and inward towards this final union with spirit. Yes, Joe, and we're over time. Sorry about that, guys. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, this may be a poor time to ask a question. I always tend to synthesis. And so as we begin this journey and we hit an obstacle and we get a pain and we resolve it and then we go forward again, it feels to me like there are, in time and the personality side of it, we are always, it's not rhythmic, it's very jerky. Sometimes it moves pretty quickly, sometimes it expands rapidly, sometimes you feel like you're going to be in the same place for a century.
Yeah,
Any comments there?
Yeah, if you could see the greater like the greater graph, of your cyclic process, like over lifetime after lifetime, you would probably see that there is a rhythm to it. It doesn't seem rhythmic. It seems chaotic because we're too close to it to see the rhythm. Um, and that's where we're going to have to leave it. So thank you all. We'll pick up next time at this point. Um, Day after tomorrow is the secret doctrine. I hope you'll be with us for that. Um, and then 2 weeks from today, Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Yes, Carol.
I had one question that you didn't see in the chat, and it's just that pictures of Lord Maharishi Meiling, which is Lord Padmasambhava, always show a blue lake of, I think it's electric fire above him. Have there been references that this electric fire is blue?
Well, it's the color of our solar system. That is, blue and indigo are often interchanged, even though at one point DK describes indigo as the color of space on a starless on a moonless night. But in our solar system, I think blue is very much related to electric fire. In the next solar system, it will be a form of red that we cannot, that doesn't demonstrate. In other words, it's not the red we see. It's energetically related to the red we see, but it's not that red. It's why I could never use it in my spiritual art, because I felt that red was always misleading in terms of where it took you. But anyway, yes, I think
Thank you.
it's definitely related to this synthetic aspect and electric fire. Yes. Okay, everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
very much. 2 weeks from today, we'll have our next TCF. Appreciate you very much. It doesn't happen without you.